on the yard. Well, hello there, BookTube. I didn't see you there. Welcome back to Buck's Books. It is I, your trusted friend and confidant, Buck. And today I figured we could get around to finally doing the new Booktuber thingy that I found when I was searching for tags to try to get more people to look at my videos. So the first question is, why did I start this channel? And the reason that I started the channel is, what you have to understand about me is that I read books at a superhuman pace, and it has gotten worse since I started to do audiobooks. For the past 10 years, after I finish a book, I will go and review it on Goodreads, and this is an entirely thankless endeavor. I get nothing from this. The reason that I do this is because I burn through the books so quickly, I immediately forget if I read them. And there have been a couple of books that I have reread like twice at 3-year intervals, 3 times, and then I didn't like the book. The whole time I didn't like the book, and then I'll go to review it after the fact and find out that I already read it and I also didn't like it last time. The Believing Brain was the last time that happened. I'm not going to review it on BookTube because you deserve better, and that book sucked every time I read it. So Goodreads is supposed to be in place to prevent me from doing that, and as a result, I have this backlog of hundreds and hundreds of books that I've reviewed, just sitting there, just rotting on the internet. So now I'm going to make my digital footprint more damaging and consumptive and spread it onto YouTube. Just like smearing it onto YouTube. What are some fun and unique things that I can bring to BookTube? Well, I'm old. YouTube and BookTube seems to be the purview of the Zoomers primarily, and that's fine. The Zoomers don't have anything else because we've destroyed the world for them, so they can have the internet, but I'm going to have some of the internet too. Also, I read a lot of these different books, like different genres of books, and I'm going to be doing mostly reviews rather than things like unboxings because I am a minimalist, which is what I call it when I don't want to own anything but plants and dogs and medieval weaponry. So I'm never going to have a book. Like, I'm never going to hold up a book. I have a Kindle. I have my sketchbook. But I don't have like paper copies of books that I'm going to, oh, look at the book. Like, that's never going to happen here. So if that is not something you want to see, you're in luck, because I'm not going to spend money on books. I'm going to purchase them legally and digitally. What are you most excited about this new channel? Well, I think it could be fun, and I'm going to be honest with you. I really like the ability to add little pictures, fun little picture jokes, like Dom Mazzetti does. I've been really enjoying myself with that. I have to get the timing better, and I feel like the editing software that I'm using is holding me back a little, but I mean, poor craftsman blames his tools, so maybe I'll get better and just tighten the whole thing up. We'll find out. Why do I love reading? It's a pretty big question. I reckon it's just because of my upbringing, you know? My father worked in a factory for the majority of my childhood, and he would always load up his little cooler. He had one of those, whereas most humans would bring lunch to their overnight factory work. He would load up a cooler with 6 of the 20-ounce bottles of Diet Mountain Dew and ice, and he would take that, the little Playmate carry-on, and he would take one of these huge hardcover books, most of which were Stephen King, to work with him, and that's what he would do. So I'm sure that left an impact. Ma read to me when I was very young. From the time I was very young, I was able to read before I went to school, and very arrogant about it, and I guess that just never stopped. I guess it has just been growing and swelling and mutating for the past 30-something years. And now I'm like this, and there's no turning back. What book or series got you into reading? This is an easy one. It starts with Goosebumps. I mean, it starts with things that weren't Goosebumps, but like most of them were just like books that I happened upon. And then the first book series that I really went like whole hog on, we're talking like first, second, third grade, that was Goosebumps. I was all about Goosebumps. And then as soon as I also read a bunch of the off-brand Goosebumps, like Scare Wolves stories, you know. And Mama Dukes loved yard sales, so she would just be gathering all of these garbage ghost story books just everywhere, and I'd get so excited because she'd spend a quarter and bring me like this ripped cover little chapter book for young adults, and it was called like Your Mama's a Vampire or something like that, and I'd be like, yo! And it was like the highlight. It didn't take much. And it's weird to say that because I had a Game Boy. You know, like technology was already invented at this point. But that was still, at the time, whew, huge. It was huge for me. And then I got into Animorphs, and Animorphs was, because Goosebumps, there were so many Goosebumps, it was not realistic to collect them all. You just gathered what Goosebumps you could. Even when I was starting to read Goosebumps, you were like 65 Goosebumps deep, $6 each. That's an impossible amount of money. My parents would never spend that, and everyone read Goosebumps, so there's no way that you're going to be... Dog almost flipped my water with his skull. There's no way that you're going to be able to find all of them. They're like Pokemon cards. You just couldn't collect them all. Unless you went to, like, the bookstore, Walden Books. And if you're going to Walden Books, you're paying even more money. Like, you're lucky to get a $6 Goosebumps book from, like, the store. If you go from Walden Books, they're definitely asking $10. I don't have $10. I still don't have $10. So after that, it was Animorphs. Huge into Animorphs. Animorphs was the one that I wanted to collect. I was obsessed with Animorphs. And after Animorphs, I made a brief foray into Magic the Gathering novelizations. And from there, it was straight into adult horror fiction. Horror fiction for adults, not like adult horror fiction, you know? Not like, well, technically, wouldn't that be, paranormal romance? This was long before paranormal romance was invented, as far as I know, except for like Interview with a Vampire. But I never read any Anne Rice novels either. So, to answer the actual question, Goosebumps, Animorphs, Magic the Gathering novelizations, a couple of Alien vs. Predator novelizations, the Doom books, whew, those sucked. I didn't know, those were the first books I kind of started to suspect that books could suck. Because, like, when you're that young, you're, like, 8 years old, every book is incredible. But, like, I'm reading Doom, and I loved Doom. I remain so into Doom. And I'm reading the books, and I'm like, I think this might be... I must be understanding this wrong. Because it seems like it sucks. And then after that, we made it into, like, Stephen King. And who was the other guy? We had a couple of Dean Koontz books, but I hate Dean Koontz. I never liked those. It was mostly my father had probably like in the neighborhood of 100 hardback books. Just most of them were huge. Like The Stand, I had The Stand. I brought it to school when I was reading the thing, and people were like, "Is that the Bible?" No, dude. Why would I be reading the Bible in public school? I don't think we're even legally allowed to do that. What questions would I ask my favorite booktubers? So, I don't really have favorite booktubers except for, like, to readers it may concern, because he's the one that I sort of looked at to figure out how BookTube is supposed to be done. Because, like I said, a lot of BookTube seems to be like unboxing or lists of books that they plan on someday reading, and I'm not into that. I'm into having read books. And it seems to me like To Readers It May Concern has successfully read a lot of books. So I guess the question I would ask him is, how you doing, man? How's things? What challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be hardest to overcome? Man, time. Time is going to be the hardest challenge to overcome. I work so much. And when I'm not working, I'm exercising or reading or walking this dang dog, and it's just a little guy. So, like, it is rare that I have the opportunity to set aside what will amount to like an hour of just sitting in front of my computer and talking to myself. And it is as of now thankless work. But I do it for the love of the craft, and I do it for you, BookTube. When did I start reading? I was like 4. I was like 4 years old. I remember the first book I successfully completed was called Willie the Slowpoke. Couldn't tell you what happened in it though. Must not have been very good, not very memorable, but I do remember having read it on my own, and that was huge. Where do I read? Where do I read is a weird question because everywhere is where I read. I read in bed a lot before I go to sleep. I have audiobooks going virtually all of the time, so I read in my car a lot. A lot of the audiobooks that I've been getting through recently have been, I ride my bike to the gym. So it's about a 20-minute ride. So I'll plug in an audiobook in the headphones, and I have 2 sets of headphones, like the earbuds, and one is sound canceling and the other is much cheaper and crappier and doesn't cancel the sound. And I use the ones that don't cancel the sound when I'm riding bike to the gym so I don't get run over and die. I have been making my way through probably like 2 or 3 audiobooks a week since I started riding my bike to the gym. And when I have the opportunity, I'll listen to them in the car, or like if I have to do yard work or something like that, chores, I'll listen to audiobooks, and anything that I can multitask on, I normally got an audiobook going on. And I do sit down and read books like a person, mostly on my Kindle, because as we've established, I don't want to own anything. I used to get in trouble for reading in school a lot. That's a strange experience. And I don't know if this is universal, or if I just, well, I know I went to a bad school, but like, I don't know if this is universal among schools. Probably public schools. But I like to read a lot, and I would bang through whatever work they put in front of me very quickly, as you do with ADHD, and then I'd want to do something else. And since I was constantly either under scrutiny to stop me from acting out and talking to people, or actively put in like a back corner of a room where I couldn't drag down the grades of any of my more susceptible classmates, I was forced to amuse myself. And since my fine motor skills at that point were not yet developed enough to do anything with art, I read. And I'd read in school, and for some reason the teachers would get mad at me for reading in school. So I'd always be getting in trouble, and they'd send notes home with me, and they'd call my parents about how I'm not paying attention because I'm reading in school. But like, the reason I'm reading in school is because I have finished the project that you put in front of me. Whatever the work, whatever arithmetic that you needed me to finish on the worksheet is done. And now I'm waiting for what happens next. And while I'm waiting, I should be permitted to read a book. Now, it has been 25 years since this has been an issue of mine, obviously, because we've established I'm old. And yet, it's still, my fury still burns so hot. Man, these teachers, they need to be brought to justice for this. It's not right. It's not right. I'm not playing with the Pocket Pikachu. I'm not playing with the Tamagotchis. I'm just reading a book. I'm reading Ascendant Evencar from Magic the Gathering. What's the problem, man? I am quiet. I am in my own lane. So, school. School was a place where I read. No matter what they did. And it was funny, because then they'd give me detention, and guess what I'd do in detention? It's actually, I vividly remember reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in one sitting in detention. What kind of books do you like to read? I like to read horror books and sci-fi and fantasy. I like sword and sorcery. I like grimdark books especially. I sort of dipping my toes into splatterpunk. Right now I'm on a kick of historical fiction. I like historical fiction a lot, like period stuff. Like I did the whole Genghis Khan quintology, Conqueror, I think it was called, and I'm loving Chris Bullman's stuff. Saxon stories by that guy with the incredibly British name, Bernard Cornwall. There he is. He's he's great. I love the Saxon stories, and his ones about King Arthur. I don't remember. Another one was called Warrior of God, or Enemy of God. Enemy of God. I don't remember the name of the series, but like just Google Bernard Cornwall. He's written 1,000 books. Look for the one about King Arthur. That was great. That was some of the best at the time. It was probably the best like historical fiction I have ever read. He's just a very talented writer. I like a lot of nonfiction as well. I like science. I like psychology. I like animal behavior. I like most things about animals. I love nutrition. I love exercise books. I love the concept of biohacking books, but the execution is often lacking. Bio-lacking. I don't know. I like to read a little bit of... No, I can't say I like to read a little bit of everything, because there are a lot of things I don't like to read. But, I mean, I have over 1,000 reviews on Goodreads. So my genres are not very limited. I'm always looking to expand my horizons. But now it's getting dark, and I want to be done with this. So, thanks for tuning in. There's one more question. It says, sometimes done, in parentheses. It says, what does your book collection look like? I explained this, I don't have one. I sold my book collection. I once had a book collection when I was in college, because I used... Nope, we're not going to tell that story. I had hundreds of books that I gathered legally over the years. And I brought them with me when I went to college. And they would... Originally, I was building bookcases out of cinder blocks and planks of wood to support all the books. But eventually that became, like, that was fine at home, but then I started moving around and I didn't want to have to move the cinder blocks, and I didn't want to keep having to buy cinder blocks. So it got to the point where I'd, like, just stack them on each other, so, like, one wall of my room would just be covered in stacked books that were always falling on each other. And then the one apartment I had 2 closets, and one was just full of books. It's like a cartoon. You opened it and then books would just fall out. And part of the college experience is moving every 6 months. You've got to move home and then you got to move back to college. And when I was doing that, I realized it's so heavy and such a hassle, and I'm not going to read most of these books again. So I sold my book collection, mostly on Cash for Books. And that, as they say, was that. I haven't had one since. I think I might have like 8 actual paper books floating around the house somewhere, and they're all like things that you'll find really easily at thrift shops. They'll be like The Hobbit or The Iliad, you know. But yeah, I just keep it all on my Kindle now. So there, that's plenty. Nice to meet you. I'm Buck. I hope you stick around. Like, follow, subscribe. You get it. Love you. See you soon.